This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth with breaking news. An Ontario man has been granted euthanasia for controversial post-COVID-19 vaccine syndrome. That's right, folks. If you have received a COVID-19 vaccine injury, you are now eligible to have the government help you kill yourself, according to some medical professionals here in Canada. Now, this all stems from this Ontario coroner's report that raised concerns over MAID practices. MAID, of course, is the Medical Assistance in Dying program here in Canada, where Ontarians received MAID where their diagnoses were unclear, or they should have been offered other supports, like this woman who went in for a mastectomy, and they offered her assisted dying instead, Canadian Cancer Woman patient reveals. Or this spina bifida patient who says that Montreal hospital staff twice offered her MAID unprompted. Of course, I reported on the Canadian disabled man who was denied care but offered euthanasia. There was the former Paralympian who told the story of how her Member of Parliament Veterans Department offered her assisted death. There was the case of how Canada is now euthanizing autistic people because this Alberta judge greenlit euthanasia for a 27-year-old autistic woman despite objections from her dad, who said that she was healthy and just vulnerable due to mental health problems. And to take this to the full end of the spectrum, all the way to where this escalates to very, very quickly, Quebec College of Physicians were slammed for suggesting MAID for severely ill newborns. Like full-blown eugenics we're talking about here, guys. Now, as if this wasn't crazy enough, I'll remind you, back in the early stages of the pandemic, people like myself were called granny killers and conspiracy theorists for suggesting that you might want to think twice about injecting this experimental mRNA technology they call vaccines. You may recall back in 2021, I put out this must-see video. Doctors blow the whistle on vaccine injuries. Here I was interviewing these two doctors who were ostracized and then labeled as pushing vaccine hesitancy for speaking out. Now, that was in 2021. You fast forward now and you look at the vaccine injury support program statistics from 2021 to now, June of 2024, and there have been thousands of claims that have gone in. Only a couple hundred of these are inadmissible. The rest are. So you look at the results, guys, over $14 million have already been paid out to claimants in compensation for their vaccine injuries. So I think people like Dr. Charles Hoffey and Dr. Stephen Malthouse and myself have been vindicated for speaking out back then about the dangers that come with taking these vaccines. And now, the very same people who back then were calling us conspiracy theorists are saying, oh, if you're vaccine injured, that could be a good enough reason for you to kill yourself under the MAID program in Canada, as Ontario man was just granted euthanasia for post-COVID 1984 vaccine syndrome, guys. It's absolutely remarkable. We're going to talk about all of this and much more in this video. Really quickly, though, before we do, I'd ask that you check me out at pressfortruth.ca/donate if you appreciate my efforts to bring you this info, guys. Here you can do a one-time donation with PayPal. You can do Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. You could sign up here or here for a monthly recurring contribution. $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever is within your means is greatly appreciated. You could also send an e-transfer to Dan at pressfortruth.ca. Thank you so much to everybody who contributes in that way. It's very greatly appreciated. You can also send stuff to my P.O. Box, guys. Links for all of this are located directly in the description below. Thank you so much to everyone who takes 1 minute today to support my efforts to bring you this information here at Press for Truth. All right, guys, let's start with this. Take a look at this. This is the Medical Assistance in Dying statistical report for 2023 for British Columbia alone. And just last year alone, in BC alone, there were 2,767 medical assistance in dying deaths that occurred here. That's just phenomenal to me. And if you look at the underlying medical conditions that were listed, you've got cancers, cardiovascular conditions, neurological, organ failures, respiratory disease, and then other conditions. 32% of them are listed under other conditions. It's concerning that other conditions are represented by 32% of the BC assisted deaths. Other conditions are reported in these categories, guys: autoimmune condition, chronic pain, diabetes, frailty, 60% over there, and other comorbidities making up 52%. Canada's MAID law does not require that a person be terminally ill. Diabetes, frailty, chronic pain, autoimmune conditions, these are usually chronic and not terminal conditions. The report doesn't indicate the conditions that compromise other comorbidities, yet the report indicates that mental disorders as a comorbidity is within that category. Euthanasia for mental disorders alone is not permitted in Canada, but if a person has a mental disorder and another comorbidity condition, then that person can qualify to be killed. So let's take a look at this Ontario man who's just qualified to be killed, all because of his post-COVID 1984 clot shot symptoms, guys. An Ontario man in his late 40s with a history of mental illness died by euthanasia after his assisted death assessors decided that the most reasonable explanation for his physical decline was a post-COVID-19 vaccination syndrome. The term is controversial. Canada's current vaccine reporting system for adverse events doesn't include post-vaccine syndrome, and multiple specialists consulted before his death couldn't agree on a diagnosis, raising questions as to whether the man's condition met the criteria for an irremediable, meaning a hopeless, incurable condition. Identified as Mr. A, the man experienced suffering and functional decline following 3 vaccinations for SARS-CoV-2. He also suffers from depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and personality disorders, and while navigating his physical symptoms, has twice been admitted to hospital, once involuntarily, with thoughts of suicide. Among his multiple specialists, no unifying diagnosis was confirmed, according to the report. However, his MAID assessors opinioned that the most reasonable diagnosis for Mr. A's clinical presentation, severe functional decline, was a post-vaccine syndrome in keeping with chronic fatigue syndrome. There's no pathological findings at a post-mortem that could identify any underlying physiological diagnosis through people's experience, although people's experiences can't be discounted just because medicine can't find what's wrong with them. However, Canada's assisted dying law requires that people have a grievous and irremediable physical condition. Psychiatric experts raised concerns about whether the man's mental illness would or should have rendered him ineligible for MAID. And of course it should have, and that's the next phase of this, is eventually, as I reported on, by 2026, maybe 2027, possibly as early as 2026, people will be eligible for MAID simply for saying they're sad. You know, and that, you know, they have a case of the SADS, and that'll eventually be good enough. Some members of the MAID Death Review panel also questioned whether a condition previously unrecognized in medicine, namely a possible post-vaccine somatic, meaning affecting the body syndrome, could be considered incurable. So the case highlights the challenges and uncertainties of granting euthanasia for people who aren't terminally ill and whose natural deaths are not reasonably foreseeable, so-called Track 2 cases. And that's exactly what we've been warning about on this channel for years now over the process of covering this death cult. Because that's really what we're dealing with here in Canada, guys. If you look at the numbers for 2023, they're starting to come in from Ontario. You saw the numbers there I showed you from BC. When the official report is in, I think we're going to see a similar increase of around 15 to 20, potentially another 30% increase every single year in the amount of deaths that are happening here in Canada as a result of the MAID program that was introduced in 2016. This is a blatant death cult that is running rampant right now. And guys, if you haven't seen my previous coverage on all of this, I would suggest you use my search feature on my website. And if you type in the word MAID, you're going to find all sorts of stuff, pages and pages of videos that I've done. Like this one, the resistance to MAID is being challenged by death cult activists please join the fight for life. Here I interviewed Angelina Ireland of the Delta Hospice Society. She is taking on the government. They took her property for refusing to do MAID. Then they sent death cult activists after her to shut her down, but that didn't stop her. She continued in the fight for life, and she's got a great program going on here to resist MAID, guys. So I'd strongly encourage you to check this one out if you haven't seen it, and go ahead and look at all the other videos I've done on MAID. Like I said, if you're sad, you'll soon be able to apply for MAID as well, aka assisted suicide. So just wanted to bring this one to your attention right here, folks. Ontario man was just granted euthanasia for controversial post-COVID 1984 vaccine syndrome. Like I said, it wasn't that long ago that I was called crazy by the same people for suggesting that you might get injured by it. Now they're saying you should go ahead and kill yourself as a result of being injured by it. Crazy times indeed, guys. Once again, if you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this info, don't forget to check me out here, pressfortruth.ca/donate. I really can't thank you enough for taking 2 minutes today to support my efforts here at Press for Truth. Again, I can't do this work without all the support that comes directly from you, the viewers. So thank you for that, guys. And that's all for today. Just wanted to bring that info to your attention. Please click the thumbs up button. Share this video with your friends and your family who you think need to see it the most. And stay tuned, guys. We're going to have more video reports coming soon, God willing. This is Dan Dix reporting for Press for Truth. We all want truth. The truth will set you free.